bless you. This really is the perfect next step for me in like the mixed themes on my page right now. And I know you said you like the poster, but I'm going to go ahead and hit you with another one of my favorite posters of this film. Fresh came out only 2 years ago. It's a Hulu original, so you can stream it with any like package. I have ads and I watched it. And if you are a girly that doesn't like spoilers, let me just tell you, it is a great film. It takes 33 minutes for them to set the foundation, show you the title card, and for you to understand what is actually going to go on. And it is a very, very gnarly movie. It is not for people with weak stomachs. So that said, if you want to go forth and watch it yourself before breaking it down with me, do that, then come back. If you want to just hear the dirty tea now, let's do it. Fresh follows the story of Noah, a single woman in her mid-20s, early 30s, what have you. She's trying her darndest to do the dating game the way it's evolved in modern day, like mostly through apps and meeting up for first dates that just go terribly. The film takes its time to set the foundation and the tone and the frustration that Noah is feeling. Our opening scene is one of those first dates I mentioned with this guy who is quite on the nose named Chad. He goes on and on about how women of their parents' generation were just better, reminds her to bring cash to the date because they don't accept credit cards at the restaurant, takes her leftovers home for his brother, and then when he's packing them up, gets his scarf stuck in the noodles. And ultimately, when she says she's not interested in a second date, he says a few rude things and walks off. The next scene, we see Noah walking back to her car. There's a shadowed figure kind of lurking up behind her. She's nervous. Her keys are between her fingers. And then we see it's a man with a baby Bjorn walking by. So we really understand that the theme of this film is going to be like women's relationship in the world with men, especially as single women. That's definitely not to say the message of the film is that single young women are alone in the world. In fact, they are constantly reinforcing that female friendship is a far stronger link than any relationship, especially in such a distrustful atmosphere. So Noah has her main girl, that is Molly. She is her more than a best friend, her sister, the only person in her life who seems to actually care and look after her. And as you can see here, in their spare time, they are making sure that they can look after themselves. A little bit of time has passed. Noah has kind of given up on the online dating scene, but here she is in the grocery store, and that's when everything changes because she meets Steve. Setting is actually perfect because it represents that totally fantastical meet cute people always talk about but never seem to be able to find anymore. Just running into somebody in the grocery store and falling in love with them. But obviously, not so subtle hinting. You could see the sign right above Noah's head. Maybe something's gonna happen. Steve seems too good to be true, and that kind of goes to exemplify how even when women do have a good option in front of them, sometimes that makes them even more wary. Steve was very intentionally cast. However, the actor Sebastian Stan is like a known heartthrob sex symbol, and so a lot of his fans probably experienced the same reaction that Noah did. The charm came out and all the defenses melted away. After a couple of dates, Noah is already so down when Steve asks her to go on a little weekend getaway with him. And it's at this point that Steve does in fact reveal his true intentions are malicious. Worse than any of Chad's antics, Noah is drugged by Steve and wakes up chained in a dungeon. In the most unnerving fashion ever, Steve maintains his casual charm, but he is not dishonest with Noah at all. He explains he's dirty rich because he's part of a very exclusive community of people that trades and consumes women's meat. He explains in great detail as she falls apart that he is going to keep her alive as long as possible because as he takes cuts away slowly, it's actually better for the sale and the price and the quality that she stays alive because it's fresh. But he does reassure her that in the meantime, she's going to be in this beautiful, wonderful cage. He's going to cook for her. He's actually a really good cook, and it's all going to be okay as long as she behaves. Nothing bad will happen. What an ironic and very true message that men who are already abusing will look you dead in the eyes and say, as long as you don't act up, nothing bad will happen. As if she isn't already chained in a dungeon waiting to be slowly sold off and eaten. But as long as she remains complicit, if she becomes hopeless, it'll be a lot easier for Steve to do his job, right? This screenplay definitely goes to an extreme level of exploration when it comes to how women specifically are commodified within dating, especially in the digital atmospheres. It explores why women have trust issues, right? Because people like Steve exist, the nice guy, the wolf in sheep's clothing, who maintain, even as they are continuing to hurt you, that they're just a nice guy. I found it ironic that to pass the time, Noah was given these gossip magazines that had advice on how to swoon men, and one of them was Smile More. But it's actually in one of these magazines that she finds a little note from somebody who had survived before her that says, if he's giving you these things, he likes you. Keep going. Now we know Noah may have a chance, so we cut to her friend Molly, who's getting worried because as girls, they had the locations shared. Now, Molly just thinks that this Steve guy might be shady in the sense he's got a second family or something like that, which she ends up finding out is true. And this is how we meet Anne, Steve's wife. Now, she is an extremely important character because she represents why being a pick-me is dangerous. When Molly goes looking for Steve, she ends up finding Anne, who pretends that she has no idea what they're talking about. But when Steve comes home, introduces himself as Brendan, and denies everything, Molly decides to call Noah's phone in a last-ditch attempt. The phone rings in Steve's pocket, and he and his wife knock out Molly. Later that night, we see Anne standing in the mirror pulling her features back like this. A self-critical symbol. She knows she's aging and that she has a shelf life, which is very relevant when you think about the way that women's bodies are looked at by Steve. He comes in and she stops doing this as soon as possible, but then he basically praises her for helping him earlier that day, and then he embraces her and very subtly does the exact same thing to her face. Did I mention he's a cosmetic surgeon? As if that wasn't enough to confirm it all, Anne then says she's going to take a shower, undresses, and that's when we see she does not have a leg. Whether or not she's the one that wrote in that book to Noah, which likely not based on this attitude, she was one of Steve's prisoners and somehow charmed her way into this wife role. But she is all too aware that she's disposable. Now this is where things get interesting because Noah does have to pretend that she's still interested in Steve if she wants any chance of survival. Steve's all for that. He's like, Noah, you're not like other girls. And he is always ready to charm. Every tray of food he delivers her has flowers on it. You could see right here, the room is dressed up nicely. He's catching the feels. So he ends up inviting her to dinner, which of course is a very specific meal, right? Noah is challenged. If she wants to survive, she has to successfully trick Steve, which means she has to eat other women. The moral sacrifice she has to make, and it does pay off because Steve's arrogance and hopeless romantic attitude, his complete oblivion to the horrific truth of what he's doing, is actually his downfall. Just when Steve is at his most vulnerable, Noah strikes back. She finds Molly, they get themselves out, but not before having a super ironic, hilarious ending where, of course, Noah finds out, on top of Steve being a psychopath, he was also married. And our last shot is of Noah's phone sitting in the field while the girls catch their breath. And Chad from the very beginning, yeah, he says, "You up?" It's a super witty, like heavily artistic film. I think it's a great time. Like I said, it's only 2 years old and I've seen it 4 or 5 times. It really covers the dehumanization of like romance through digital platforms. It's a fascinating parallel to those terms that the podcast bros are trying to normalize as well, like the dating marketplace. Hitting the wall is basically having a shelf life, is it not? Talking about dating as if what it comes down to is like the meat that you are living inside of. It's a truly fascinating, entertaining, crazy movie. Definitely would recommend it.